You might get a request to say yes on the live. Is that right?
Um, yep. Okay. Yep.
Okay. Okay. So, welcome to Hashim's podcast. Today, we're back to Australia from South Africa and Dubai. Today we delve into the Italian migrant story, which has been a cornerstone of Australian history and American history. And as the Italian community continues to thrive, grow, and build, their stories are always important to document. Homegrown talent and creative, Frank Lotito is someone who has always strived to keep the stories alive. Pellegrini's Melbourne Legacy was Lotito's way to frame this important film as a work, an act of cultural remembrance and tribute to Italian migrant experiences, telling stories of ancestors, parents, and grandparents who came to Australia with nothing, who helped shape its culture, especially through food, community, and social connection. He emphasizes that these stories are about belonging, resilience, and community, pointing to how Italian immigrants helped make espresso and cafés a core part of daily life in Melbourne. In his own words, Frank in his documentary says, "It speaks of our ancestors who arrived in Australia with nothing and created extraordinary success stories. It's about the cultural impact and legacy Italian immigrants brought with them, not just food, but shared experiences of identity." Lotito's work, whether in Wog Boys Forever, Pellegrinis, or his other Italian influence projects, often centers on multicultural experiences, identity, and storytelling, rooted in his own background. This includes exploring how Italian Australian communities maintain tradition while contributing to broader Australian society. Lotito is an Australian actor, comedian, film director, and producer from Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. He's active in the film industry from the early 2000s to present day, with a career spanning in acting, stand-up, producing, directing, and writing. He currently lives in Melbourne with his family. He's known for working across genres and markets in Australia, the US, and Europe. He has upcoming projects in development such as The Dons, based on an Italian Australian novel and starring Franco Nero. So that was a long introduction, I know, but let's all welcome Frank to the show. Good morning, Frank.
Good morning, Mo. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for accepting our request. It's really interesting to have you on, Frank. I haven't seen the film yet, Pellegrini's,
Yeah.
and it's a sad story, but it's an important story to tell. So
Yeah.
before we get on Pellegrini's and Sisto, can we also let's talk about your history because it's quite a big, large history from a long time ago. Can you just begin all the way from the beginning for us?
Where it all started.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, look, I really got into the industry accidentally. Probably about 30 years ago. I was working in a family restaurant, and I was a bit of a clown. I was the maitre d' and waiter. I was a bit of a clown, and got discovered by a guy who was doing a theatre show, and I ended up doing this theatre show, and it kind of stemmed from there. Really, I started doing comedy mainly. So some of those shows were kind of ethnic based, and I'd play the Italian, or and one in particular was The Wedding. I did 30 years ago. I did a show called The Wedding, and it was about an Italian boy who marries a Greek girl, and the clash of cultures. And we did that across Australia for about 6 years. So that was really my education in acting and performance and in theatre. And then from there, I kind of started, gaining interest in film and television, and slowly became a producer, and doing a lot of TV. And I started in TV ads and shooting video clips and all that sort of stuff, and short films, and then started producing TV. But at the same time, I was still kind of performing and doing stand-up comedy, and it wasn't until 2000, and I think it was 2010, that my now uh, business partner, Joe Curso, and I decided to do our first feature film, which was Big Mama's Boy, starring myself and Holly Valance, which did reasonably well. And that was our sort of the start of our feature film careers, if you can call it that.
Yeah.
But then I kind of moved to the US and did some American films and as
Wow.
well, and
Yeah, I was
started
gonna
directing. So, yeah.
yeah, I was gonna mention the States. Was there much inspiration from the Italian American character or the what the Italian Americans did to cinema in Hollywood with your work?
Uh, oh, look, yes. I mean, my influence across the board. We in 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 my career, I always gravitate towards people that have similar backgrounds. I guess we can connect with that. And of course, anytime I would watch something that was either American or even Australian, I would look at the credits and see, are there any Italians working on this? I mean, I loved Italian. I grew up on Italian cinema. My parents used to take me to the movies when I was a kid. I grew up in Brunswick.
Bertolucci and Fellini,
Yeah, and there were
all that
yeah, and there
stuff.
were a lot of picture houses in Brunswick on Sydney Road, which don't exist anymore. But and they would show Italian cinema. Some of them which were American films, I found out later on, but they were dubbed in Italian.
In
So
Italian. Yeah.
I didn't realize that Ten Commandments was an American film until very late.
Oh, really? Charlton
When I
Heston
was a teenager, when I saw it on TV, and I thought, wait a
yeah,
minute, I remember seeing this in Italian, but
in Italian. Also,
um,
the
yeah,
spaghetti westerns. I used to think they were
yeah.
American initially. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's right. Well, the reason why they were called spaghetti, I didn't know it till later as well, but they were
Apparently,
spaghetti west
they
because it
were
was
called
shot in Italy.
yeah, and apparently they were
Yeah,
called macaroni westerns before that.
that,
Something.
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So, but the Italians are very good. Sergio Leone was the master of westerns. So yeah, Scorsese, Coppola, those sort of directors, actors like De Niro and
What was your
Pacino.
favorite Scorsese film? Was it which was the first
Oh,
one that
look,
you liked?
look, I think Goodfellas
Oh, of course,
still
yeah.
is still right up there. I mean, I love all these films, but Goodfellas is just one of those that if you catch yourself watching it on TV, you can never get away. You have to watch it to the end. It's just one of those films that I've seen it dozens and dozens of times.
What about The
So
Godfather?
I love The Godfather. Yeah, again, you could same thing. You watch that. I think it's a masterpiece and before its time, and Brando was amazing in it.
Yeah,
So
great.
yeah,
There was actually a movie in Australia in 1966 called "They're a Weird Mob"
they're a
by
weird. Yeah,
yeah, and
yeah, yeah,
it starred Nino Culotta, who was I think it was
yeah.
one of the first sort of migrant films where he was middle class. He came to Australia thinking he was going to be a journalist and a magazine guy. I think Graham
Right.
Kennedy was in that film, and he's sort of forced into labor and brickwork because he didn't have any English.
Yeah,
And there's a really funny scene in that movie where he comes and asks for a beer, and the guy said, "You want a schooner or a midi?" And he didn't understand
yeah.
which one was which. That's a great Australian movie. So
It
it's
is.
always been
Yeah,
around the Italian footprint of art and belonging and bringing out the voice.
yeah.
It's been around for a long time. So
Just
what
not
was your
enough of it, I don't think. But in Australia,
yeah, probably not. I mean, growing up, for me, I just knew Vince Colosimo. I think I watched
well, that was
Moving
one of
Out.
them. Moving Out was had a big influence on me because I was about 18 when I first saw that.
Yeah,
No, but probably a bit younger. We went on a school excursion to watch it at the cinema, and that was really the first time that I saw someone around my age on screen that was telling our story, and
yeah, yeah.
so I really
And,
resonated with me.
and
Yeah,
there was another one too. I used to borrow from Blockbusters called Hero. It's just called Hero. Remember that one? He's wearing the
yeah,
red
yeah,
jacket, the Thriller
yeah.
Michael
That
Jackson
was
red
Lost
jacket.
Mode.
Yeah,
Street.
yeah.
That was Street Hero.
Street Hero.
Street
Sorry. Yep,
Hero.
yep. That's
Street
right.
Hero. Yeah,
Yeah.
Cosimo is jacked up in that film.
Yeah, that's right. So, so you're saying there wasn't enough, or there isn't enough, Italian work in the industry. How was the industry when you first began?
Oh,
Where's,
look,
yeah,
yeah, I don't think there are enough voices telling our stories back then, or even now. To be honest, it's a bit better now, but The very little shows that actually had Italian Australian characters that I would be put up for as an actor. Um, Vince Cosimo would always get those. Anyway, but there just weren't many, and so I would end up playing. I did some ads, and I was the pizza boy, and maybe I'd be put up for the terrorist or whatever.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, just the stereotypes, eh?
Yeah, just a stereotype. So, I was kind of, I guess, and even to this day, uh, I know that there's an audience out there that want to see these stories, and Pellegrinis is a perfect example because it did, even though it's a small documentary, it was very evident that audiences really gravitated towards it and came to see it at the cinema. So it did really well. Um, Another example is Signorinella, which is another um, documentary that came out and did really well. I think people really want more of those stories. And I'm
Yeah.
doing I'm doing a stage show at the moment called The Italian Divorce.
Divorce, yep. Seen that, yeah.
Yeah, which is doing really, really well. And the feedback we get from people at the end of the show is, thank you for telling that story. This is our story. I can see it's my parents up there. It's very nostalgic. And so, yeah, I feel like audiences not just Italians, I think immigrants and first, second generation, yeah, immigrants really resonate with these types of stories, and I think we need to see more.
Yeah, they're very important to also differentiate between, I mean, for people that don't understand the difference between the Greeks and the Italians and the Egyptians and the
Yeah,
Lebanese.
yeah,
I mean, I come from Egypt. Our story is never told in Australia. We
no, that's
came to
right. Yeah,
Australia in the late 50s. Dad came to Australia in the late 50s in WA,
yeah,
escaping communism. And that
yeah,
never gets talked about. And no one even knows the Egyptian story. And you get lumped
yeah.
into the,
I
yeah.
I do because my accountant is Egyptian,
Oh,
so
really? Wow.
yeah.
That's incredible.
So
Let's
yeah,
work
yeah,
on a project together. That's amazing.
yeah,
I've got a lot of
yeah.
stories.
But
Yeah.
I do know, yeah, that story. Yeah, no, and you're right, Mo, because we don't, I think, unless we ourselves tell those stories, or and we have to tell them and do them ourselves. We can't wait for permission to do it. So it's the only way, and there's probably not enough of us in the industry,
Yeah.
um, because it's a tough gig. It's a
Oh,
tough gig
yeah.
to
But
to do
you've
the
got
tell these stories, and
pioneers like Nick Giannopoulos and George Kapaniaris. They
yeah,
began with the was it the what's that
they did the wogs out of work
Logs Out of
stuff, and
Work? Yeah, and what was that
yeah,
TV show?
Acropolis Now.
Acropolis Now. That was a big one, wasn't
Yeah,
it? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was huge. That was one of the highest rating sitcoms of the day,
Yeah.
and the only one uh, at the time. I
Yeah.
mean, we don't make sitcoms anymore, but yeah,
Yeah, it's really important
and
to tell the stories because I was brought up with Australians, Italians, Greeks, and I used to sit in the middle because I was like the only Egyptian. And I used to watch them fight over food. Like the Italian bloke would say, I can't eat a souvlaki, it's got yogurt in it. You can't have meat and yogurt. And the Greek guy would be like, you guys make, pasta. My mum makes better pasta than that. So it was
yeah,
interesting
yeah,
to see all the little fights and little, details. Yeah. So
yeah,
let's move on to. I've actually got some information for you. I don't know if you know this, but the
yeah.
word wog actually comes from Egypt, believe it or not.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
let me tell you some. I got it here on my drive. So the English invaded Egypt, and they used to have Egyptian laborers working in the desert, working for the English, and they used to
Right.
call them workers on government service. They would wear armbands with WOG, workers on government service, and there were these little children running around the laborers back then, right? And they would make little dolls because they used to call these laborers ghouls. Now, ghoul in Arabic means ghost. They used to call them
Yeah.
ghosts
Right.
because they were out in the desert, no one can see them. So the
Right.
little children living around these workers would make little dolls and call them ghoul. So the English took some of these dolls, and when they returned back to England, they couldn't pronounce ghoul, So they call it golly. And to remind them where
Uh,
they got it from, they said golly wog.
Wogs. Yeah, right. That's where that comes from. I had
That's
no
where it comes
idea.
from. And then you got a lady called Florence Kate who started writing picture books. One's called The Adventure of the Two Dutch Dolls and the Gollywog. So
Yeah,
it's workers and government service. Obviously, there was a different connotation in Australia. I think it meant some bad stuff in the 50s and 60s. But it's
yeah, yeah,
changed. The way it's completely changed, and the meaning of it has changed, and it's become, sort of diffused,
yes,
and it's become humorous. It's just an interesting concept. So I thought I'd
yeah.
throw that in.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's very interesting. I didn't know that. I mean, look, I have a love-hate relationship with the word, obviously, and I directed Wog Boys Forever.
Yeah, we're going to get on
But I
that. Yeah.
try, yeah, but I try to kind of, if you look at any of my stuff in over the years, I tend not to use the word in anything I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like it kind of uh,
What does it, what
puts you
does it
in
mean?
a
What does it mean for you?
well, I feel like it for audiences and for non-ethnics, I guess, if you want to use of a better word, it kind of puts you in a box, and it means a certain thing. Whereas what I do is just telling stories, and yes, some of those stories are of Italian Australian heritage or background.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily want to put it in that box. So I find it hard to
Okay.
kind of use the word, even when we're, uh, sort of marketing things and stuff that we do. Like, some people have commented like the Italian divorce is a wog show, and I'm like, no, it's not a wog show. It's a show about family. It's a show about
Okay.
nostalgia, and it's about love and guilt. So, and
Yeah.
you can be of any background really, to appreciate that show. So, not that there's anything wrong with it, and I think Nick has done an amazing job over the years to kind of use that and make a career out of it, and he's done 3 shows. So, but for me personally, I feel like it's got a certain connotation that I'd rather not put myself in, because the stories I tell are varied, and they're not just WOG stories, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean. Yeah.
So it could be
Yeah.
a nasty word. It could also be endearing, especially when you say it to one
Absolutely.
another. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's,
absolutely. If
so,
we
so
do something, we'll constantly say, don't be a wog. Or don't, you're
yeah.
so woggy or whatever. Yeah.
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 So do you think the say the Wog Boy franchise, if you want to call it that, one's made every 10 years. There was one made in
Yes,
2000
that's
with
right.
obviously
That's right.
Colosimo and Giannopoulos, and then again 2010 Kings of Mykonos with
Correct. Yeah.
um, and then 2022. So do you
Yes.
think the idea of the franchise and then all the work now with Sushi Mango and everyone else. Are you doing a favor for the Italian community and sort of the ethnic community, or are you sort of cementing stereotypes to the unknown to people that don't know the culture or don't understand the language?
Well, it's an interesting one because when you talk about stereotypes, and a perfect example is, for me personally, when we did Big Mama's Boy back in 2011. And the film, and that was starring Hollywood Lance and a lot of other personalities and comedians that we know, like George Capanaris. Um, when that movie came out, audiences really loved it, did really well, but critics were saying, "Oh, it's stereotypical, it's cliche, it's this and that." But when we look at it, we don't feel those words uh, uh, are suitable, because that's what my mum was like. You know, you look at the mother in that movie, that's my mother. It's not stereotypical, it's what it is. And so it's like, do you tell those stories and try and be true to the characters? Yes, the Sushi Mango characters are over the top. They
Yeah,
could
they're
be
they're
considered
exaggerated.
exaggerated and stereotypical, but people relate to it because
They're
that's like my
hilarious.
dad, or that's like my grandfather, or you know. Sorry, that's my phone call ringing.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's a tough one because um, the reason why the Italian Divorce, our show, works really well is because people see that show and they can relate to the characters, and whether that's the mother, the father, the siblings, or the wife, there's something in that show that people can relate to. But do you call it stereotypical because the mother, you know, is a overbearing, Sicilian
over controlling.
overbearing,
Yeah,
controlling food mother that dotes over her son?
yeah,
Is that stereotypical, or is that what most Italian Australian mothers are like, or grandmothers are like?
yeah.
So I have again a love-hate relationship with those with those words.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
the over exaggeration is important now. I mean, things like
yeah.
full frontal. We had the Bogan characters, and
That's
you
right.
had the Paul Hogan,
Yeah,
Crocodile Dundee. It's always been around. But I actually showed some of Sushi Mango's work to people on this side because I'm in Cairo at the moment, and
yeah,
they could see a lot of themselves in it. But they actually got a little bit
yeah,
angry. They're like, "Why is he? Why are they doing that?"
yeah,
Because sometimes people don't see themselves like
yeah.
that, even though
No,
they
that's
are.
right. Yeah,
And
yeah,
I had a chat with the great David Williamson last week. We had him on our show. We're talking about Don's Party, the great
yeah.
Graham Kennedy film. David wrote that film, play and screenplay, and that the same thing happened to that category of Australian back then. It's like, are we really like that? And
Yeah.
then we might be, so we just got to get used
But we're
to it.
not. I mean, yes, we're not all like that. There's not. It's just a character, and that's the way it's portrayed. And
Yeah,
so you either connect with that character, or you like that character, or it makes you laugh,
yeah,
or you don't. You're not going to please everyone. And yes, some people are going to hate those characters that whether it's the Sushi Mango character, or Nick's character, or any characters that we do, you're going to either love it or hate it,
yeah,
or in between. Oh, it was okay. You're not going to make everyone happy. And
yeah,
so, and how can you? It's like, people come and see our show, and even though it's about Italian Australians, we've had Asians that come and see the show and really love
yeah,
it and go, even though the mother is Italian, she's a bit like my mother, who's Chinese,
yeah.
and they can see the, the
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 similarities. Yeah.
the similarities in it.
And it's really
So
interesting how I mean, the
yeah,
Europeans that came to Australia assimilated and they wanted to emulate the Australian. And then the Chinese that came up, and the Vietnam, the Asian community that came in the 80s and late 70s, they were trying to emulate the Europeans.
that's
It's
right.
like the next one up, and that was shown in the Wog Boy. I think that it was the girls, the curls get the girls, and you had
Oh
the
yeah,
Asian
that's right.
character
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right.
copying
Yeah, yeah,
Colossimo. Okay, so
yeah.
let's move on to the third Wog Boy 2022 quickly. How were you approached for that film? I mean, it's quite a big film in Australian history. It's an important film.
It
Um,
it is. Yeah, as you say, Nick does it every 10 years. Unfortunately, COVID hit, so it got pushed back a little bit.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, look, I worked with Nick, Vince, and Alex Dimitriadis on Wog Boys live on stage as an actor
yeah,
back in 2014. So we did Wog Boys. A return of What Boys on stage, which did really well, and we all got along really well. And then I went off and made Growing Up Smith in the US,
yeah,
which was in 2015, um, which is an American film about an East Indian family that moved to Middle America in the 1970s.
yeah.
And Nick saw that film that I directed and produced and really loved it. And so, yeah, when the time was right, he kind of offered me the job as director, and I jumped on board. Yeah. And
And
so
how
that's
did you
how that.
feel? Did you feel sort of intimidation, or did you feel that I've got to do the right thing by the film and the theme? Because there were two made before you by different directors, by the way. Each one was made
Yeah,
by a different director.
all different directors. Yeah, look, obviously, look, it's Nick's film. I was a gun for hire, and I was trying to give, as a director, give Nick what he envisaged and what he wanted, and be true to the franchise. Absolutely. I had my own ideas, which sometimes, got knocked back. But, as creatives, everyone has a kind of vision of how you want things to play out. And but I think the main thing was that Nick was happy and that audiences really loved it and it did really well.
And how was it working with the Sushi Mango guys? That would have been a hoot, eh?
Look, everyone was great. I think we all had a good time on that film. It was a lot of fun. I think it was Sushi Mango's first film, and they did really well. And
Yeah,
um, yeah, it was great. Like we just every day was a bit of fun, and I think for me as a director, it was great to kind of work with all these different characters and comedians, and everyone kind of brings their own
yeah,
energy to the film, and I think it shows. We don't take ourselves too seriously in that film,
that's the main
and
thing.
yeah, yeah.
There's a really
So
great film that I liked of Alex Dimitriadis in the 90s called Head On. Remember that film?
yeah, that was he did well. That was
Yeah, and I compare that to Mean Streets, Martin Scorsese's Mean Streets, where you had I think it was Robert De Niro was trying to be American,
yeah,
and the other character was trying to be living in both worlds. You know, he'd go to the Italian
yeah,
functions and wear the suit, and then at night he would hang out with De Niro. So I think it's a very
yeah. That's right.
similar
Yeah.
idea. So with Scorsese as inspiration for you, are you thinking of making a gangster movie, an Australian gangster movie?
No. Look, it's interesting because even though my influences of Coppola and Scorsese. My other influences, probably the films that I like making the most are Spielberg
Oh,
or
really? The big stuff.
Steven
Okay.
Spielberg or
Wow.
Ron Howard, those type of guys who make feel good movies.
Wow.
Well, they make
Okay.
they make many different genre films, but um, I like making uh, feel good films with a lot of heart, and they're the hardest to make, really.
Yeah.
Genre films where if they're a crime thriller or a horror, or they're kind of easier to make, but the films I want to make are harder. Just like, I'm in pre-production on a film called Nonno, which
Yeah.
is which is based on a book by Archie Fusilo called The Dons.
Yep.
And it's a film again about Italian Australians, but it's a beautiful film about a grandfather who shares a bedroom with his teenage uh, grandson, and it's about generations. And he's a bit embarrassed by his grandfather, thinks he's going crazy, but we find out he's getting dementia. So it touches on themes and things that our generation are kind of dealing with at the moment. And, do we
Wow.
put our parents in a home? Do we take
Yep.
care of them? The guilt, all that sort of stuff. So, but ultimately, it's a film about hope, and it's got a lot of heart in it. And they're the type of films I gravitate towards. But if someone would give me permission to make a crime film, I wouldn't say no. Or an action film, I wouldn't say no.
Well, I just had John Killick. I don't know if you heard my second.
Yeah,
Yeah. So John Killick
yeah,
was escaped from jail, Silverwater prison, on a helicopter. And
yeah,
it's the
yeah,
only. No one's ever done that ever. He's not
yeah.
proud of it, but he talks about it. He's written a book
But he
about it.
did it. Yeah.
He did it. We had him on the show, and that would be a great. That would be a great
That would
film.
make a great film, yeah.
Yeah, he had a Russian girlfriend who hijacked the pilot in a Russian accent, obviously, and he was really scared of her, and they did the escape through the Russian girlfriend. Okay, so talking about heart, let's go on to Cestilio Malaspina, your great
Yeah.
documentary about Pellegrino's espresso bar. So let's talk about let's talk about your history with Pellegrinis and
Yep.
when obviously the incident happened, and then I guess the idea for the film.
How it came about.
It's
Well,
one of
look,
those things that's
yeah,
yeah, sorry, yeah, it's like
you go on.
you have to wait 10 years before you make a film like that, or because it's such a terrible thing to happen in the community in Australia, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that was a tough one. Look, I'd been going
Yeah.
to Pellegrini since I was about 18 years old. I
Yeah.
discovered Pellegrini's when I started going to the Metro up the road, the
Yep. I used to go to
nightclub.
the Metro, yeah, Bourke Street, yeah.
Metro, mate. Yeah, it doesn't exist anymore. It's a hotel now. But yeah, and I think my parents used to take us out really only for pizza, and we never got further than Lygon Street in Carlton when
Toto's.
they take us out. So, I kind of discovered Pellegrinis
Yeah.
on my own, and I go to the theatre. The Princess Theatre is around the corner, and so I was kind of a regular. But I traveled a lot, so I wasn't there all the time. But when I was in Melbourne, I would always go to Pellegrinis, and I knew Sisto and Rocco. Rocco had been there for 50 years, and yeah, I think it did a lot for it's been there for 75 years, 76 years, and what it represents is not just a part of history, but it represents uh, who we are as people, as immigrants, as pioneers, as people who came to this country with nothing and were able to achieve, great things. And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter where you come from. It just so happens to be Italian, but I think that's what it represents, really.
Yeah. So,
And
okay.
what happened was a couple of years ago, I met a guy by the name of Rob Gabriel, who was a pioneer in himself. Who, he's one of the ones who started the internet through through Telstra and stuff, and he used to go to Pellegrini's all the time as well. And we were there one day, and he said, we should make a documentary on Pellegrinis. No one's ever done that. And I was a little hesitant at the start because I thought, well, it's a little bit touchy with
Yeah.
Sisto,
Yeah.
that tragic incident and him getting killed. I didn't really want to go there, so it took a lot of pushing from Rob to get me to agree to it. But it wasn't until we sat down with David, Sisto's son, and got permission from him to do it that we actually decided to pull the trigger on it, and make the documentary. So that's kind of how it happened,
How it
how it
happened.
came about.
So the
Yeah,
history of Pellegrini started in the 50s, 1954, and
correct.
Sisto took over in 1974. Is that right?
That's right. So Vildo and Leo Pellegrini started Pellegrini's in 1954, and then 20 years later they sold it to Sisto and Nino Pangrazio, who were partners at the time. And they had it up until I think 2019 or 2020,
Yep.
when David Sisto's son took over. Yeah,
Yep. So that was around the Australian Olympic Games, 1956. Was that
correct, correct.
did it
And I think
feature?
that
Yep.
Yeah, that was 1956 was when really the Italian food scene really took off, because a lot of chefs and workers from Italy who were feeding the Italian team
Wow.
actually ended up staying in Australia. So we got an influx of Italian chefs,
Oh, well, that's a great
but
story.
really
Yeah.
kind of it started much earlier than that. I think Florentino's was there in the 30s, and they used to bring, sort of chefs in from Italy, and workers, immigrants working in that restaurant. But really, Pellegrini's, along with places like University Cafe and Il Cappuccino, which doesn't exist anymore, were really the pioneers of coffee, espresso, and Italian food back then.
So there wasn't
Yeah.
any espresso in Australia before then?
Can you believe that?
Wow,
And
that would be hard to imagine.
before 1954, you couldn't get an espresso coffee anywhere
Wow.
in Melbourne.
And
They
now you
had
get it.
coffee houses. They had coffee houses, and the coffee houses were popping up in Melbourne, um, or coffee palaces, I think they called them, were popping up in Melbourne prior to 1954. But they were serving, I think, coffee, in percolators,
Yep.
and made out of chicory and stuff like that. So it wasn't real coffee like we know it today. Yeah,
Yep. And also I think Pellegrini's was the first pizza maker. Is that right? They made pizza.
correct. They made pizza. They made pizza by the slice, and they were really the
Wow.
first to do that. The first to do gelato, at the time. I mean, there's a story that goes around there. There's stories going around about who was the first to introduce coffee, and some say Pellegrini, some say University Il Cappuccino, or there was another cafe called Nando's cafe, not Nando's chicken. Um, and the story goes that they brought in the first coffee machine, which landed on the wharfs and stayed in customs for about a year and a half because they didn't know what it was, and they thought um, they weren't willing to hand it over to who was a woman actually who imported
Yeah.
the first coffee machine.
Wow.
Yeah, and because they thought, oh, first you need a boiler's license to operate this thing. Someone thought it was a bomb. They had no idea what it was. So, but then eventually they got that machine, and Nando, who opened up Nando's Cafe, decided to open up. It was on Elgin Street, I think, in Carlton. Decided to open up on Easter Sunday. It
Yep.
was near a church, and he thought that if Italians were coming out of church on Easter Sunday, they would walk by the cafe, smell the coffee, go in and try it, and that's exactly what happened. So I'm not sure if they were the first, but yeah, it's one
Yep.
story.
Wow, amazing. So coming up with the story for the documentary, how did you put it all together? What was were you focusing on the tragic loss, or were you focusing on his
No, it
family?
wasn't. I mean, look, we couldn't make a documentary about Pellegrinis without talking about Sisto's tragedy. So it is part of the story, but that's not the focus. I think the focus is more about, how it all started, what effect it had on our culture in Australia, our food and coffee culture in Australia. Um, and really, again, like I said earlier, it's about those who, and it's not just in coffee, but those who came here on a boat with a suitcase and a couple of bucks in their pocket, wanting to start a life. And that's what that was my focus really.
Yeah,
It's about my parents, my
amazing.
grandparents.
Wow. And
Yeah.
Sisto himself was a great man. I heard he used to give free coffee and free food to
All the
people,
time.
and so
All the
generous.
time. Well, I can't tell you how many free coffees I got. Because and he says it in the documentary, for him, it's not a business. It was never a business. Yes, he made money to live on. He was there all the time. For him, it was about the people and it was about giving. And it didn't matter who you were, whether you're a politician or a famous actor or a famous artist or a guy off the street, a common worker or a homeless man, he would treat everyone the same. And, I think that was part of his legacy and why he was loved by many and why he got a state funeral. One of the few in Melbourne, cafe owners, one of the only cafe
One of the only.
owners
Yeah. Yeah.
in Australia to get a state funeral. So he was very loved, and he was very generous. He did a lot for a lot of people. Yeah,
Yeah. So the documentary itself, is it, how did you film it? Was it just interviews with family members, streets of
it was
Melbourne?
interviews with family members, people in the industry, friends. Lindsay Fox was interviewed. He probably knew Sisto the longest, a non-family
Wow.
member. Sisto and Nino, when they were working for a catering company back in the 60s, Lindsay used to use them and they would come to Lindsay's home and cater for his parties and stuff back then. So, yeah, and we interviewed Guy Grossi, who used to own Florentinos, and Tony Nicolini, who was a pioneer in himself. So yeah, and we interviewed Sisto's son and David and Rocco, who worked there for 50 years, retired. We
Yep.
we filmed his retirement after 50 years. Can you
Wow.
imagine working in one place for 50 years?
I can't imagine that. That's
Yeah,
insane. That's crazy.
yeah. So
Unbelievable.
there's archival footage we use in the
Yeah, I was going to
film,
say our cover footage. Yeah.
photos, lots of photos, and yeah. So.
Yeah. So what's the mission for the future? Is it to bring back Italian culture to the younger generations? I mean, your
Well, look, uh, I've kind of gone full circle. I used to live and work in the US and made various films, and then because of COVID, we came back, and now I'm living in Melbourne and kind of gravitating towards. As I get older, I start getting nostalgic and reflecting, and I see my parents getting older,
Yeah.
and soon they won't be here like all of us when our time's up, and I've kind of felt like I had an obligation to tell our stories, and the Italian divorce is one of them, Pellegrinis is another. Now I'm doing Nonno, which is about is our stories about our families. I don't know.
Also a
I kind of
documentary or
like doing. No, the Nonno is a feature film.
feature
Yeah,
film?
so
Okay.
script. Yeah. So I kind of feel like it's something I want to explore, and maybe uh, with my business partners of the same mindset. Something we want to explore and see where it takes us. Tell our stories and for that next generation, and you know, put it in a time capsule so generations to come can see it and go, wow, that's what it was like, and that's how hard it was for them, and this is
Yeah,
what they did for our country. Yeah,
sure.
that sort of
Things
stuff,
like
I guess.
the Italian Festa. Remember the Italian Festa? Where did
Yeah.
all that go? What happened to that history?
Oh, look, that's still. I mean, it's not happening at Lygon Street anymore. I think it was becoming a little bit too costly with insurance and stuff. They used to have the greasy pole. I don't know if you remember that, the waiters race, all
Oh
that sort
yeah,
of stuff.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah,
Doesn't
yeah.
exist anymore, but they have it at the exhibition building. Look, I think I was there at the festival last year, and I think they did an amazing job to represent that culture and the food and the fashion and all that sort of stuff. I think it was probably one of the best I've been to last year. So I feel like even though it's not at Lygon Street,
Yeah.
it's at the exhibition building. There are a lot of uh, producers, food producers, and people that are doing great things for our culture, and it was represented really well. Music and art and performance as well. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well,
So,
Italy's known for all the the sculpture and the art and the opera. I
oh,
love a bit of
absolutely.
opera. Yeah, so it's full
Yeah,
of
yeah,
art
yeah.
and culture,
That we
and
all.
that needs to continue. Look, Frank, I've taken a lot of your time. It's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Absolute pleasure
Thank you,
talking to
mate.
you.
Thank you.
We could keep talking on and on and on. So, where is
Yes.
the film being shown next before we go for our audience?
Well, look, it's still in. To our surprise, it's still in cinemas. I think it's still
There's one in
showing at.
Yarraville. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're doing a screening at Yarraville
Yep.
and Bendigo, but it's still at Cinema Nova in Carlton, and
Yep.
after 8 weeks, I think.
That's
So
amazing.
it's great. But it's going to be on Prime on Doc Play, starting the 14th of March as well, so people can stream it. SBS is picking it up as well, so that'll be later on in the year, maybe June, July. Yeah, so it's still have a life, and people can watch it.
Well done. And I think Sister will
Yeah,
be looking down and smiling at all the amazing
I
work
hope
you've done
so.
and the tribute
I
you've
hope
given
so.
her.
Yeah, I
Frank,
hope
it's
so. I know
been
his family are really grateful, and they love what the film's done for them. So yeah,
That's amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Frank. You've been
my
listening to
pleasure.
Hashem's podcast, and it'll be great to have you on again, part two, somewhere
Anytime,
along the track.
anytime, mate.
Thank you,
Cheers.
Frank. Have a great
Thank you.
day. Bye.
Bye bye.
See you, everyone. I'm going to hang up on here.